Your digital footprint and how to minimize it. Episode 1: Introduction and the concept of a digital footprint. Welcome to this 3-episode series on your digital footprint and how to minimize it. In this series of 3 videos, we will explore the concept of what is known as a digital footprint and discuss methods that you can employ to minimize it if you wish to. An advanced knowledge or understanding of computers and digital technology is not required when watching these videos. Rather, these recordings have been created to educate audiences with a basic to intermediate understanding of digital and online technologies. This first episode will begin by defining a digital footprint and examining how it shapes our identity in several ways. This includes what we do on social media, how often and to whom we send emails, and how we conduct our banking online as just some of many examples. We will investigate the various traces we leave online, looking at examples and evidence of these. We will also discuss how we are being monitored online, by whom, and the reasons why we are being observed in such a way. In the second episode, we will look at the many reasons we may wish to reduce our digital footprints, tying this into theory from the literature on surveillance in a modern world of big data. We will consider the arguments for and against reducing this footprint, touching on such issues as law enforcement, anti-terrorism, privacy, and marketing ethics. The third and final episode will be a hands-on educational tool designed to instruct people of all levels of computer literacy on steps that can be taken to reduce their digital footprint. We will look at various options of anonymizing the online experience, such as VPNs, proxies, and software such as Tor. These tools will be explained in detail and become clear as we go along. We will also learn about the effectiveness of these different tools, concluding with a discussion about whether it is possible to be truly anonymous online. Any literature referred to, paraphrased, or quoted throughout this series will be referenced using the Australian Guide to Legal Citations method and will be posted in the description section under each video. I will also post any links or websites I refer to in the description section in the order that they come up. Part 1. What is a digital footprint? Although several variations on the precise definition of a digital footprint exist, all point to the same general idea. Sandi Varnado broadly defines a digital footprint to collectively include any and all files and accounts, whether stored locally or online. Specifically, this would include any digital item such as a person's digital information, digital assets, digital accounts, and digital estate. Digital items can be the means by which to access other digital items, like email, for example, or they may be collections of photographs, videos, documents, books, music, or other things, social media accounts, or other materials. Varnado's definition is helpful to show just how far-reaching a digital footprint may be. She also points out that an individual's digital footprint can be stored locally or online. Another handy characterization has also been referred to as the active-passive distinction. According to Mary Madden and her colleagues, an active digital footprint is one that captures any data deliberately released by an internet user, such as information released by a blogger or when an image or status is uploaded to Facebook. A passive digital footprint, on the other hand, is one that captures information or personal data made accessible online with no deliberate intervention from an individual. For instance, whenever we visit a web page, our internet protocol or IP address is logged as having viewed that page along with other data such as the time visited. This type of digital footprint tends to cause the greatest sense of unease. In light of these different ways of defining the term, for our purposes, the most helpful definition of a digital footprint is that it describes the trail of information that internet users leave behind. This is comprised of information transmitted actively or passively online, which leaves traces of personal information about yourself that as a result is made available to others. We will now examine these traces in detail. Part 2. What traces does a typical internet user leave online? The most basic form of internet use is to simply browse the internet. This involves accessing websites and reading or downloading the material contained within that page. In order to do this, any modem or router on your network will be assigned a unique IP address which can be traced back to the person who is registered as the user. This would have occurred when you signed up with your Internet Service Provider or ISP. Whenever you access a website, your computer sends a request to that website that takes on the form of packets of data, each of which contain your modem's unique IP address. As will be discussed in episode 2 of this series, with the recent passage of mandatory metadata retention laws in Australia, all of this data must now be stored by your ISP for 2 years. It is important to understand that metadata includes the identity of a subscriber and the source, destination, date, time, duration, and type of communication, but excludes the content of web browsing history. This would fall under the category of information stored as your passive digital footprint discussed in the first part of this video. There are, however, several other online activities that bolster an internet user's digital footprint through more active user input. The first of these we will discuss is email. Sending an email will contribute to your active digital footprint, as this email will be viewed and potentially saved by its recipient. In addition, depending on the privacy policy of your email service provider, any emails may be stored by the company providing the email service itself. The privacy policy of web-based email providers, such as Hotmail, are available for viewing online. To view the privacy policies of other email servers, you may need to get into contact with your ISP or whoever is providing use of the email server. I would encourage you to do this. Either way, it is likely that any emails you send or receive will remain online for an indefinite amount of time. As previously mentioned, whilst ISPs are now obliged by law in Australia to retain metadata pertaining to the source, destination, date, time, duration, and type of email communication, they are not obliged to store the content of the email itself. Social media is perhaps the most active way in which our digital footprints are bolstered. Whenever you upload information to any social media platform, such as Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, this information will form part of your digital footprint. This will naturally include status updates, photographs, or any other personal information that you publish. Even something as simple as liking another page on a social network can add to your digital footprint, since this information will be saved on that particular platform's servers. Again, I would encourage you to examine the privacy policies of any social networking sites you use. What you find will probably surprise you. It is important to remember that while you can delete content from social media sites, once digital data has been shared online, there is no guarantee you will ever be able to remove it from the internet. This also applies to any information you publish on blogs and any videos you publish or upload on YouTube. As the information age continues to unravel, the types of traces of a typical internet user will leave online can only continue to grow. The emergence of online banking, cloud technology, and an increasing number of devices with access to the online world will see a widening of the net of the digital footprint. It's now time to investigate just how this information is being used and by whom. Part 3. How are we being observed online and who is watching? You may not realize it, but a number of different groups are monitoring your behavior online. These groups range from commercial to government entities. We will begin by looking at the commercial players, as this appears to be where most of the observation is coming from today. As we discuss the following, it is important to remember that all of this applies also when you browse the internet on your phone or other devices. If you are using Wi-Fi on your home network, the unique IP address will be the same as when you use your PC if connected to the same router on your home network. Online advertising is rampant. In order to tailor and deliver appropriate marketing messages, it is helpful to think of 3 separate parties at play. We have the publishers who publish and display advertisements online on their web page content. Examples would include online newspapers, search engines, and blog publishing sites. Secondly, we have the advertisers who market the products and want to sell something to you. The publishers and the advertisers often work together as we would expect, and the seller of a product will often pay the publisher to advertise their product on an online publication that will reach their target audience. This is all fairly straightforward and something most of us have come to expect in a modern world. There is, however, a third party at play that you may never have even realized existed. This third party is often referred to as aggregators, also known as data brokers. These guys step in when an advertiser wants to target a far more specific audience. Data aggregators, companies such as Gravity, Outbrain, and Rio to name a few, collect data from your browsing habits and use it to target advertisements. As you may have heard already, the use of cookies is crucial for these guys. To explain how cookies work, a useful example is Google News. Whenever you sign into this website for the first time, the links to news articles that will be displayed will be appropriate based on your location that is identified by the IP address you use to access it. However, after you have signed on for the first time, Google News will also send a cookie to your internet browser. From that point on, whenever you return to the website or browse through it, information will be sent back to Google News and vice versa to tailor your experience by adapting the content displayed to your particular browsing habits. Google are not publishing any of these articles themselves, they are simply providing links to external news sources based on your interests and behaviors. This is how all aggregators work. What's more, using the Google News example, often the cookie will not be domain name specific. This means that the information collected will not just be for the purposes of Google News, but for the entire suite of Google sites and services. When you click through to an external news site via Google News, for instance the Sydney Morning Herald website, the news site will know that you clicked through from Google News since your browser also sends information about the referrer. On top of this, the news site will then begin to send their own tracking cookies your way, as will any third-party advertisers that may be on the site. A useful program that you can download for free to see all this occurring is a simple browser add-on known as Ghostery. This program sits discreetly as an icon in your browser and is currently compatible with Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and Opera. It is also available as an app on devices such as smartphones and tablets. Ghostery monitors all of the different web servers that are being called from a particular web page and matches those with a library of known offenders. In other words, it provides a handy list of all the different parties who are tracking your behavior on that website. When these trackers are detected, you are given several options, including blocking the tracker altogether or getting further information on the tracker by reading Ghostery's knowledge database. In episode 3 of this series, we will discuss the effectiveness of this method in reducing your digital footprint and compare it with other options, including disabling cookies altogether. To give you an idea, when I visit the Sydney Morning Herald homepage, I can see there are 15 trackers currently in use, and when I view a specific article on metadata, there are 20. Another way data aggregators acquire and use your personal information can be illustrated using an example of an account you have created with an online dating service. If you initially signed up to this service, you would have provided your gender, age, and location at the very minimum. As before, the dating site will have placed a cookie in your browser, but now it can also leave a third-party cookie with data for an aggregator. This is a cookie left by one website, but containing the return address of another website, that of the data aggregator. The dating site will also add the personal information you have shared, specifically your age, gender, and location, to the cookie. Then, when you visit any other website that embeds content from the same aggregator, for example, a shopping website, additional information will be collected. When the aggregator puts all of this information together, they can then paint a fairly vivid picture about you, including your relationship status, age, income, shopping habits, gender, location, and interests, to name a few. The aggregators can then share this information with the advertisers to deliver any targeted marketing messages directly to you in the future. From all this, it is easy to see just how much data on people these aggregators collect. Furthermore, the claim that third-party tracking cookies are anonymous is often disputed. Although aggregators claim to not store information that directly identifies a person, research has shown that protection is often lacking. As such, your digital footprint can result in a loss of anonymity due to the sharing of information by third parties who have little regard for the consumer's privacy. Again, this all typically applies to any other devices you use to access the network. Whilst the main observers and watchers of your behavior online tend to be those with commercial interests, it is important to discuss briefly the issue of observation by government departments or agencies. As was revealed by Edward Snowden a few years back, the NSA in the United States had developed a program called PRISM that collected private electronic data belonging to users of major internet services like Gmail, Facebook, Outlook, and others. This was said to be in response to terrorism concerns post 9/11. What was most concerning was that PRISM was collecting both metadata and content. Here in Australia, as we have already discussed, ISPs are now forced to collect metadata under the latest legislation, and this data can and will be shared with law enforcement in the event of a request being made by that agency. However, the questions that remain unanswered in light of the PRISM revelations is just what was and is Australia's role in the collection of and access to online data and the information collected by PRISM. Whilst no program has ever been exposed in Australia of the same type, what is clear is that in the modern digital era, there is a lot more information available to the security community. And it remains true that Australia is one of the most important cogs in the global security network run by the United States. It has been revealed that any tip-offs or relevant security concerns passed on by the US are now examined by the Counter-Terrorism Control Center established in 2010 and run by ASIO, that includes representatives from the Australian Federal Police, the Defence Signals Directorate, and ASIS. It is understood that as a result of data mining operations, it is now even easier for Australian security organisations to obtain the content of communications involving Australians and foreign nationals. This is the end of episode 1. In the next episode, we will look at theories of surveillance and the arguments for and against reducing our digital footprint.